Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining our diagnostic training session today. Now, if you have any questions throughout the session, if you're watching on Zoom, just look at the top of the bottom of your screen. Wherever your Zoom controls are, you should see a little button that says Q&A. Click on that, type in your question, and I'll get to those at the end. If you're watching live on YouTube, just use the live chat function wherever it happens to be on your screen, and I'll get to those at the end as well. So my name is Jason Gabrinas. I'm one of Snap-on's national diagnostic technical trainers. Been in the training department the last 10 years or so, traveling around North America, helping techs and shop owners get the most out of their diagnostic equipment. Before I did that, it was a couple of years as a diagnostic sales rep with Snap-on. So I had about 30 different franchisees I worked with, as well as the shops that they service, in order to help everyone get the most out of their diagnostic needs. And before that, it was 8 years at Subaru. So worked in a dealership, and I guess over time became the default diag guy in the shop. So I always had the drivability problems, the intermittent problems, the weird wiring problems that would show up on those cars. And that's really where I cut my diagnostic teeth, was trying to figure out all those weird head scratcher type cars that would come into my bed. And before that, a bunch of other miscellaneous wrenching jobs. Been a little over 25 years under hood experience for me. So our topic today is reveal the unseen, thermal imaging diagnostics, using thermal energy in order to help us with our diagnostics. If you've watched any of my videos before, or many of my videos, you know I like to talk about workflow, having a good repeatable workflow. That way we don't miss anything, we don't skip any steps, and we can be thorough enough to make sure that everything gets done. So everything from a pre-scan through diagnosis, through recalibration, and a post-scan. Now, even before we get the vehicle in the bay, we have a few other steps that we need to take care of as well. We need to capture the customer complaint. When the customer comes in, we need to find out, well, why are they here? Are they here because they have a noise? Do they have a battery drop? Do they have a leak? Whatever. Then we need to, of course, road test and then inspect the vehicle. So after I've driven it and it's gotten warm, or the tires have gotten warm, or the coolant, what have you, I need to inspect and cover the cause. So when we talk about thermal imaging and how it works into this whole workflow, it's really going to be on the inspection phase and also in the diagnosis phase. I can inspect the vehicle, and then maybe I might find some maintenance issues that way with the thermal, but also diagnosing and determining the root cause of the problem, be it a short or whatever, that's would go under the diagnosis side. Right? Now, as far as a thermal imager works, some people don't quite have the full grasp as to what it actually does. So what it does is it works on a temperature differential. It's not displaying necessarily hot versus cold. It's displaying the difference in temperature between two things. So if we look at these two scales, they are wildly different. The scale on the left, the white hot part is 175 degrees, and the blackest coldest part is 75.6 degrees. That's over 100 degrees, or almost 100 degrees difference from top to bottom. But if we look on the right side, the coldest is 72.5, and the hottest, this white hot, 83.6. So that's what, 11 degrees difference. So white isn't necessarily hot. White is warmer relatively to each other, works relative to each other. So 83.6 at the top, 72.5 at the bottom, or 175 to 75, right? So there's a big difference in those two temperature differences. So just be aware, just because it's white doesn't mean it's hot. Could still be 50 degrees for all you know, right? So just always make sure you're looking at the scales on the imager. And it helps us reveal the unseen, as we talked about as the title of this episode. For example, motorcycle, and we see we got the pipes there, and they're insulated pipes, double wall insulated pipes. So you can see very hot coming out of the engine, but then it gets cooler somewhere in the middle there between 770, where it's coming out of the engine, to 59 degrees, which would be ambient temperature, I guess, in this case. We can see the same position, and it's considerably cooler, which is what you'd want. And then we also have over here a heated seat, right? So you can see the seat, couldn't tell, 17 degrees at the lowest, 69 at the hottest, warmest, what have you. So you can see it was pretty cold out that day. 17 degrees on the cold metal parts, and then 69 degrees coming inside on the heater there. So allows you to see heat come through. And we'll see some cool, I got some new shots that I haven't used before in here with, I think, some really interesting things coming from A lot of these come from actually my buddy Nathan, who works for Snap-on Diagnostics, and he actually sent me this case study to use in this class today. He has a truck similar to that one, right? It's a 14 Dodge Ram 2500 with a Cummins, 71,000 miles on it. You can see right there. I think he just hit 372, but he noticed that transmission's running awfully hot. The coolant's at 186 and the oil's at 194. Why is the transmission running at 215? That seems awfully high comparatively to what everything else really should be running at, I would think. So he did a little investigating in there. So we take a look at how the transmission cooler mounts and how it kind of works. We see there's the radiator in the front of the vehicle, of course, and then mounting to the front of the radiator is going to be this transmission cooler. It's like a little itty bitty radiator. And then we got some lines that come off it to hook up to the transmission lines that go back, of course, to the transmission. Also in here, though, there's this little check valve type thing. It's got a little thermostat inside it. So if that fails, we could have some sort of an issue with the heat getting through there, or maybe this is clogged, whatever it happens to be. In this case, he used his thermal and went up underneath, took a look at that block, and he saw, wow, 237 degrees going into that block, and it's not really flowing. You can't really see any flow through there. So it's considerably cooler on the rest of it. So it was blocking the flow. Now, if you go in there, you can find there's that little thermostat I was talking about. So it's a removable piece. You remove the pipe, and then there's a little circlip that goes on the outside, holds everything in there, and then that little valve opens and closes depending on temperature. It's a little thermostat and allows the flow to go through into that radiator. So if it's clogged or that block gets clogged, which ended up being what happened, that little block was clogged. So you just need to kind of clean it out, flush it out, reassemble it, and everything worked the way it should. But that is a little something that you could catch with that thermal just by simply scanning around. So I thought that was kind of a cool little story there. Then let's talk about electrical diagnosis. So that's probably the most common thing that would come to mind if you are using thermal imagers. That's how we would talk about it usually when we first came out with it. I was like, oh yeah, find a short in a wire or something like that, which is definitely useful for, but it's useful for way more than just that. Here's a really good example of a high resistance battery terminal, right? So that is, you can tell by the shape there that that's not a factory terminal, right? It looks like one of those little replacement ones you can get for a couple bucks down at the parts store. And very, very hot, getting very, very hot on one of those bolts there. A lot of resistance going on there. I think they said it was maybe painted too as well. So we can see how the wire there is rather warm, but very, very warm. 118 degrees, 109 in the middle. So 118 degrees Fahrenheit there. That's pretty darn hot. And when we have high resistance, such as in this case, it will generate heat. So that's how we can see that. We see the heat. So with this aftermarket thing, now this was also a no start situation in this case. The battery voltage itself, if you test the battery itself, is like 12.4 whatever. And then the voltage drop across this terminal from there to there was 3 volts, a little over 3 volts. So it's down around 9 volts to go through there. So yeah, that's a definite problem, and that could cause a no start issue and cause all sorts of conditions inside the vehicle. So pretty easy to find though, using that thermal imager. Here's just another example of a high resistance connector, right? Plug in where it would plug in together. Maybe it's got some green fuzzy stuff in there, something like that. Could cause a draw, could cause a voltage drop across. Here's another one. It's actually, you can see it in the wire. You can see the wire in the harness right here. It is hot, 157 degrees in that one wire. So that would be resistance in the circuit, in the wire itself, coming out of the connector or what have you, whatever it is. Or, hey, where's my draw? Do I have a relay that's stuck on? Maybe internally the relay's damaged, something like that. So we can see, hey, that relay's warmer. That means that relay is working harder. Tires and brakes. I like this one too, because this gives us some good maintenance functions plus some other diagnostic capability. So we can see on this vehicle, alignment issue. It was way more friction on the outside of the tire than on the inside of the tire. So rubbing a little bit more on the outside. And then in this one, in the good example, we see it's fairly even across the board. So instead of it being real warmer on one side than the other, see it's just kind of across the board doing what it should. Can also find overinflation. So overinflation means that the sides of the tires really aren't going to make as much contact as the middle part of the tire and the contact pad. So overinflated tire will show up as warmer in the middle, and then vice versa, underinflation. So we can see it's warmer on the outside, cooler on the inside. So it's rolling more on the outside of the tire, maybe squishing down a little bit. So it's more friction on the outside, so less pressure on the inside there. So it kind of cups like that. You can see the underinflation. One of my all-time favorites is this one. It's a pinhole leak in the tire. Subarus, as I used to work at Subaru, they had quite a few years of rims that would they'd get all crusty and they would start to leak, just kind of where the tire would seat, or, we'd have leaky tires, pinhole and stuff like that. So you get the soap out, right? But I would much rather not get wet and get soap all over the place versus just kind of looking and seeing where's the air coming out, because the high speed air coming out at pressurize the tire and see what happens. It's going to be cooler than ambient around. Here's another one on brakes. So this is a truck with a stuck caliper bolt on one side, and then the other side, it is way cooler. You can see how it's like 120 degrees on the wheel there, and then if we go to the other side, we can see it's like 300 degrees on the caliper. So 120 degrees on that side. Go to the other side, and we have 300 degrees in there. So that one was stuck on that side, not necessarily making the tire too hot. It's -3 outside too. You see what the bottom range was. Yeah, so -3 outside. So you can see considerably warmer on one side. And then this one's off of my car. I just actually looked at this one the other day. So I know less than 6 months ago, I replaced the rear brakes on my car. I did them in the spring. And now I come to stop, I get a pulse in the pedal, not in the steering wheel. So of course, a pulse in the pedal or a pulse in the car means it's probably in the rear, because if it's the front, the steering wheel is going to shift. So I figured I know I have a warped rotor back there. Is it both? Is it just one? And where is the warp? So you can actually see where the warp is, because it is hotter in one spot, 180 degrees there, versus 170 degrees, or actually 111 degrees right in that spot, 152 degrees in that target right. All right, so 152 degrees there, 111 degrees there. It's a 40-degree difference. That's where it's rubbing a little bit harder on that one spot. So I don't know, maybe I'll get them warrantied out when I have time or something like that, because they're less than a year old, those rotors. So, but yeah, I just thought that was I figured you probably could see something like that, and sure enough, you can. So it's hotter on one spot of the rotor than the other, and that's where it's kind of rubbing a little. How about drivability? This is another excellent use of a thermal imager, right? So drivability, inline 4-cylinder. Which one's not firing? Easy enough, right? It's the one that's darker than the rest, because it's the exhaust it's not hot. Exhaust isn't hot because, well, it's not firing. So there's what cylinder is misfiring right there. That one's a kind of easy one. Why is it misfiring? You can shoot across the coils and see if you got a bad coil. Now you can see down below the coil where it's kind of like the spark plug tube. So I guess the rest of the engine is going to kind of warm it up a little bit, but that coil is not generating any heat. Of course, when a coil energizes itself, it's going to definitely generate heat. So I can see these other coils here, and that coil is definitely not doing it. Pretty simple. And then if we can see across all the coils there, they're all working. This is another drivability issue. So a clogged muffler can definitely cause a drivability issue. If the engine can't breathe, the air can't get out. So funny story with this one. This is another one Nathan told me too. He said he was in the shop, working for Snap-on, of course, but he had his imager with her, and the tech was trying to convince, or the shop was trying to convince the customer that, hey, your muffler's clogged and we need to replace the muffler, and that's why. And the customer didn't really believe him. So he took a picture with the thermal, brought it out, and showed the customer, said, notice how it's out like 400 degrees coming into the muffler and then nothing coming out of the muffler. Well, it's because the exhaust is getting clogged in there and it can't get out the other side. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Customer's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. There we go. Do the job. Right. I thought that was excellent use, and he didn't even work there either, which I thought was great. But yeah, clog muffler. I've dealt with that. I don't know how many times at Subaru. You know, I had one. I definitely remember where the cat was in front, right on the late 2000s Foresters and such. The cats are up in the front, and the cat broke apart, and then it clogged up the pipe in the back. So having this, I would have been able to see it rather than having to disassemble the whole thing and figure out where the clog was. Cooling system. That's another one you might think of right off the top of your head because, hey, it's dealing with temperature, thermal. So here's an example of a bad heater valve. It's not allowing the heat to go through. See how that's much cooler than the rest. And then we can also see over here where it's working, where it's allowing the heat through there. Radiator. How do I find a clogged radiator? Well, that one's pretty easy. So it's cold on one side, warm on the other side, and this one's warm all the way across. Thermostat. Is the thermostat opening or not? So in this case, there's a thermostat housing right there. We can see the hose. Hose is cold. Thermostat's warm. And then on this side, we see the thermostat housing's warm and the hose is warm. That means my coolant is flowing through. Super easy. This one I thought was really cool. And it unfortunately not on the Thermal Elite, which you could have taken a video, which I bet would have been really cool, taking a video on that. But this is a blown head gasket. Looking down inside the radiator or inside the coolant bottle. Because the hydrocarbons inside the coolant's going to be the same temperature, right? But if I got other stuff in there, like hydrocarbons, temperature is going to be different on those hydrocarbons. So you can actually see it swirling in there and see it mixing in. And I thought that was really cool because working at Subaru, how many head gaskets you have to do on a Subaru? It's like all the time. It's like a 60,000 mile service. Anyway, so I thought that was a really cool picture too. Other items, a door leak. Here's another one. So he was driving down the road, and anytime the wind would hit his door from the side, say, man, it made a heck of a noise, like a screaming noise in his, on the side door, and he couldn't really figure out where it was. So what he did was he turned on the heat full blast, turned it all the way up, close the door, find out where does the heat come out, because it's just going to leak in the seal. If the wind can get in, the wind can get out. And then he could see that there, and you can see it was fairly chilly outside that day, 36 degrees, 56 degrees coming out here. You can see the heat busting right out. So another one, fairly easy. And then I'll leave you with this one. That was a fancy animation. I didn't see that one. But this was at home. So he heard a noise somewhere, kind of heard the some sort of like a frazzle noise or whatever. Looked around with the thermal imager, got real close to the noise, and found out that this USB socket that wasn't even plugged in was on, and it was hot. I mean, 96 degrees, but how hot does it need to get close to something combustible to start a fire? So being able to even see something like that, or in a wiring harness on a car, same thing, but USB socket in the house, obviously we would unplug that and throw that right away because it's stuck on. But yeah, what's that worth to you? I think it's worth definitely more than the thermal imager house. So we do have 3 different types of thermal imagers that you could use that are available. This is the original over here, the thermal imager, diagnostic thermal imager. Then we have the thermal imager Elite, which we're going to talk a little bit more about here in a minute, and the extra functions that does. And then we also have the diagnostic thermal laser, which kind of combines the laser thermometer and thermal imaging technology with it as well. So 3 different options, whatever you'd like. And the other nice thing about it is when you take a picture, this is the one that I have for my rotors, right? When you take a picture, it'll save 3 different versions of that same picture. So we have the thermal with the scales, we have thermal without the scales, and then we have the plain old camera because the Thermal Imager Elite has a camera on it. It'll save to the tool that way. It'll also upload to the Snap-on cloud that way. So it'll upload to the cloud the 3 different versions of the image. So I'll have my with the stuff on it, without the stuff on it, and just a plain looking video camera stuff on it as well. So let's talk about a few things on the tool itself. I'm going to try something a little different that I don't normally do. Boot it up here. You can actually hook up. Well, I don't have a video output on it, right? So I need to there we go. All right, so there's my thermal imager. There's a little bit of a delay because I'm going over Wi-Fi with the camera, but there's the thermal imager. It's just sitting on the desk, so you're not really going to see anything on the screen. But what we do want to see is if I go to, say, the menu, and then first thing that pops up on the left here, we see we got the that little eye right there. So that is the troubleshooter. There's actually a built-in troubleshooter inside the tool that you can use. So let's say for powertrain and exhaust example, there's where I got that misfire problem, right? So we can go down to the exhaust manifold. And then there's the exhaust manifold, known good. It's going to give you a little bit of how to use it, how to do it. And then it gives you a known bad. You go up and down. So known good, known bad. Little troubleshooter articles inside the system, just based on that. I thought that's pretty helpful to have that. So back out things like differential is pretty cool too, I think. See, there's a good one. There's a bad one. Bearing's too hot, right? Side bearing on the differential, 100 degrees, 107. Oh, it's actually 170 degrees over here, but it's cooler right there. See how it's definitely. There's also a demonstration mode. Trying to do this with a delay is interesting. You can see a demonstration of it's actually a video taken, and you can see how it kind of looks on the AC condenser. Let's see. Heated seats, right? Same thing. Exhaust leak. You can see the exhaust leak right there. Cool little articles. Wheel bearings, put a vehicle on a lift, go to 40 miles an hour, expect the wheel bearing for temperature. There's bad on video. AC condenser, and so on, right? So this, if you can't really think of things that you would want to use it for, you can actually go right inside the troubleshooter and see all sorts of cool things. It's really anything you need to see temperature with. So that's the built-in troubleshooter. There's also, you can access all your files. So I got some movies here, so I can just click on one. I don't even know what, oh, that's my cat. Cat, and you can see the temperature on her ears. Pictures. There's one for AC, side to side, checking the AC. So you can store all those. You can get them off the tool by, there's a USB cord that'll attach in the top, the same thing you charge it with. You can actually hook it up to your computer, and you can dump them off there through Windows Explorer. Or, as I said, they'll upload the picture files anyways. We'll upload to Snap-on Cloud. The video files do not, but if you want to get the video files off, you can just get them off in Windows Explorer. Also, I want to note over here on the bottom left-hand side, there's a little cloud with the check mark. That means that has been uploaded to Snap-on Cloud with that. If I go to the right again, I can go where I can delete the files. So I just highlight whatever file I want to delete and hit the trash can. And then if I go all the way to the right, we have our settings. So in order for it to work with Snap-on Cloud, you of course do need to set it up to Wi-Fi. So you can go in through Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi connection, and that'll allow you to upload. You also need the numbers off the tool. So if you can go into Alta Setup, you can go in there. It gives you the serial number, PIN, and code where you can enter that in as a tool on your account. Set the date and time, of course. Color palette. So if I want to see different colors, so it defaults to this iron color palette that we're all used to. You can go to a rainbow, you can go to gray to iron, and then cool to hot with gray in the middle. So it shows the coolest and the hottest thing, or coolest and warmest thing. Remember, we talk about the differential in the scene. So it'll light up the coolest thing blue and the hottest thing red, and then the rest will kind of just be a gradient of gray. So that allows it maybe even jump out even more than what you would be used to. Brightness is going to change the brightness of the screen. Language, It's going to change the language. See, we got quite a few languages available on there, especially since it's not a lot of stuff to translate in here, of course. So, you know, it'll work anywhere in the world, or at least on any of these languages. Not necessarily anywhere in the world, but automatic shutdown timer. So you can tell it to shut down after X number of minutes. Some navigation tips, spotlight intensity. So it does have the camera and it does have a video. So you can actually have a spotlight that'll turn on if you hit the Y button. It's got a little picture of a spotlight on it. There we go. Yeah, so you can see you can turn on the spotlight there. If you're under a dark engine bay or underneath the vehicle, you can turn on the light and how intense that is. You can go through a calibration process, and also there's an advanced menu as well. So I go into advanced, it's going to give me temperature, so I can go in Fahrenheit or Celsius. Emissivity. So this is what emissivity is different materials are going to produce or emit thermal energy different. So if I'm working around plastic, rubber, and painted metal, which is more than likely what you're going to be dealing with on a car, that's kind of where it defaults to. It's going to go to that. Strong oxidized iron and steel and leather, mild oxidized iron and steel, polished cast iron, polished aluminum and chrome. So depending on what you're working on, you may want to go in there and change that accordingly. Object distance, whether it's near or far you're trying to measure, so it can actually see it further away. Test the Wi-Fi status, check your micro SD card in case there's a problem with it, and then any of the about information there. Exit out of that. Okay. Then also on the tool on the screen, of course, we have our, this is the temperature of the spot in the middle. Here, you see a little spot in the middle. That's 89 degrees apparently. Warmest and coolest things in the scene. So you see that's a 3 degree difference from warmest to coolest in the scene, because it's just laying flat on there. And actually my mixer's underneath here, so it's actually emitting some heat. Whether the Wi-Fi is connected, battery status, zoom levels. So you can actually go use the left and right options. You can zoom in and out, and you can also change the scene. So here's side by side. Here is picture in picture. So the outside would be video and the inside would be thermal. And then up to 3x zoom. There's also an opacity. So I can have 100% thermal. And if I use the up and down arrows, 80, 60, 40, 20, nothing. So you can go down and see how much thermal will overlay over the camera, so I can get a better bearing as to where I'm at. And that's left, right, that's up and down. And then, yes, you're not going to be able to really see it, but you can turn on the light with that. It's kind of hard to see if you can turn it. Yeah, you can kind of see the light right there. Shining at the camera. There we go. So we got a little light under there. Turn that on and off. All right. And then, if I were to want to go to check my files on Altus, that would have been saved in there. There we go. Snap on Cloud, and go in there, log in. And you can see my vehicle system reports in there, and then there's my wheels from the other day. Okay, it's uploaded, and then if I go, I can share this with a customer, or I can go to the right, I can share this one, or I can go here and I can share that one if I wanted to, or I can do and I can mark it whether it's known good, whether it's bad. I can add any other keywords, wheel, brakes. Oops. Spell it right. There we go. And then if I go back and I wanted to search for that, like I'm just going to go back to the top and I wanted to look for brakes. You can see right there. That's the only thing I've ever tagged with brakes. And you can see it comes right up like that. If I want to do thermal imager, I can just do DTI Elites. And that'll come up with anything from the thermal imager that I've taken, then uploaded here. So you can see pretty powerful. I can also share it, right? I can share it on my phone. email, copy the link to a clipboard and share it with the customer. I also have one in my shop files as well. So these don't get deleted. Right? Those don't get deleted. So you can actually share it and the link will stay permanent even if you delete it in the regular drive. So that is thermal. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about next week. So next week's week number 2 of our all new classes. So we started 5 new groups of classes once more, as we do here. So we do 5 classes, then we repeat them again. That gives you plenty of chances to come in, ask questions, catch it live. So you can go to snapon.com/OT to check it. Oh, by the way, it's current pros and pressure transducers. What are you missing is the topic for next week. So it's going to be kind of a combo. Current probe and pressure transducer, a little course. See, what could you be missing if you're not using these? There's a bunch of things that we can do, a bunch of things we can test, we can do in combination with each other as well. So we'll look into that. Same time, same place, 6 to 9 Eastern every Tuesday. Snapon.com/OT if you want to join on Zoom. The 6 p.m. class goes live to YouTube like we're doing right now. So youtube.com/Snapon Diagnostics. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and all that. 9 p.m. Eastern class goes live to my Facebook page. So it's facebook.com/SnapOnJason if you want to give me a follow over there. Give you as many opportunities as you can to get as much free diagnostics training as you can, because I know everybody loves having training, and if it's free, even better. If you want to see any of the previous topics in this series, they are archived on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/SnapOnDiagnostics, anywhere from ADOS to OBD2 and anything in between. Fuel injectors, lab scope, no-code diagnostics, motorcycle diagnostics. Over 30 hours of free training available to you 24/7 whenever you want. Just go to the YouTube channel. There's a playlist for live training. It's there. We'll get to questions here in 1 second. I just want to make sure I also mention my buddy Keith, who also does free diagnostics training, but he does it on Scan Tools. So Wednesdays on Zeus, Thursdays a combo Apollo Triton class. They're all about an hour and a half or so long. And they're going to be starting with the basics, setup functions, set up your Wi-Fi, talk about Snap-on Cloud, secure vehicle gateway, things like that. And then he goes through code to completion on fast track intelligent diagnostics. Then after that, takes about a 5-minute break, goes through the scope and meter functions on the corresponding tools as well. It's a very thorough class. It's kind of designed to have it sitting in front of you so you can follow along with what he's doing on the screen. He puts his tool up on the screen. It is Zoom only, so you got to sign up at snapon.com/OT to go there. All right, let's get to questions. Now, if you do have questions on Zoom and you showed up late, just find the Q&A button and then type it in there. It looks like we got quite a bit of chatter on YouTube. Let's see. Luis Gomez says, greetings, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Quinn, welcome as always for joining every single week without fail. Nick, welcome from the United Kingdom. I know it's late over there. Keith Bland says hello. Quinn says, being a Ram, I'm surprised you didn't need security to check the transmission. Yeah, could be, right? Actually, it was older. It was a 14 Ram, so it wouldn't have been there anyways. But I get you. Nick loves the free training. Quinn says, did I go to Nashville over the weekend? And if so, is there anything cool and exciting coming down the pike? So I did go to Nashville this weekend, and we had a really great time. I'm sure you'll be seeing pictures all over Facebook and whatever about stuff that was there. The two, nothing new in the diagnostics world, because we haven't really done that at the show in the last few years. We do it, earlier in the year usually. But what is cool is with the latest diagnostic package that the franchisees could buy, mini fridges, guitar that you could win, soda called Mr. Pitt, pretty cool. Also, other than diagnostics, a 100-tooth ratchet coming out, and there is a stubby 3/8 brushless air ratchet that's pretty cool, 18 volts. So those are the two kind of. I don't get a ton of time to walk around the show when I go, but when I do, those are the couple cool things I saw. Let's see. Back up. SP says, could have been an air pocket instead of a head gasket on the coolant. From what I was told, I wasn't there to take the picture. From what I was told, though, it was not a bubbling situation. It was because it was sitting inside the coolant bottle, so you probably would have seen the bubbling. So you said, yeah, it was just like swirlies going around at a different temperature inside there. Good question. Anthony Nofight said thermal imager can be used to check whether a network module is not going to sleep if there's a battery current draw. Absolutely. So I can check my different modules and see, oh, that one's warm and it's not supposed to be on. Perfect. Let's see. Keith asks, is there any chance they'll make Advantage as a 4-channel lab scope and electrical diagrams on it? Probably not. Just because we do have the 4-channel lab scope with the Zeus, and then of course the wiring diagrams. I mean, you have the wiring pinouts, right? The diagrams themselves, that's a separate shop key thing. So I don't know if we'll get that either. Nick says, can't wait for next week. Absolutely. Thank you. Donald says, currently saving up for a thermal imager. They look very handy. Good training video. Thank you very much, Donald. I appreciate that. And Quinn says, cool to all the cool stuff coming out in Nashville. So be on the lookout from that for your North American Snap-on franchisee, because of course the UK, theirs is in February, and their shows in February, and Australia's shows in January. So just North America franchisees if you're watching somewhere else. But hey, cool stuff coming down the pike as well. All right, so with that looks like that goes through all the questions. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of time out of your day. Spend a little bit of time with me. Hopefully you're a little further enlightened on what thermal imaging can do for you. Hopefully we'll see you next week for low amps probes and pressure transducers. And I got one more question popped up. Can I trust the imagery for an open wire if there are multiple wire bundle like a window door switch? You should be able to see the individual wire in the difference. It's sensitive enough where it can pick up on the individual wire. Now you have to figure out, visually, maybe turn the opacity down a little bit and see which wire it is visually. But yeah, you should be able to see the individual wires in the bundle, as long as it's not like buried, right? So you'd have to open it up a little bit, but if it's buried in there, you probably won't. But if it's where you can actually get a good visual on it and the thermal that's emitting, I'd be able to see that. All right. Thank everyone very much for joining me. Hopefully we'll see you next week for pressure transducers and low amp probes. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Have a good night and take care.